the new features of Dream Report 4.6. The way I'm going to present today's webinar is a series of PowerPoint slides, probably in more detail than in the slides than I would like. So I might slide through those a little quicker because I have product to show you. Many exciting features, and really we can break these down into four kind of main categories. Enhanced reporting functionality, a lot of new functions and features in Dream Report in terms of actually tools and to use in your reports. There are a couple of special edition versions, which we'll talk about shortly. Some productivity tools really focused at, say, systems integrators and OEMs to really let them make the most of their engineering efforts with Dream Report. And then some performance enhancements that we have implemented, really focused at large multi-user, multi-data source, large implementations of Dream Report. So let's take a look at some of the new reporting functionality. First of all, we have really revamped the whole graphical engine, updated the look and feel of all of our tables, our charts, some of our widgets, 3D look to all of them, shading, rounded corners, so really just a more modern, enhanced visual to all of these graphical objects. We also have the ability now to conditionally show or hide any object on a report. So you might want to only display a certain chart if some other value or some other condition is met. Or at the moment the report is run, we could look at a real-time value in a PLC or the HMI, and depending on what the state of that analog or discrete value is, we could then show or hide the graphical object. And as well as based on some other complex condition that you might come up with in a report. Quite a few of the objects have also been enhanced to be more interactive on the web side of things. So for instance, if you have the native output of a report to be a web output, you have some formatting options, for instance, in a table object to dynamically sort the table by clicking on any field. You'll see the little up and down arrows, the ability to expand and collapse an entire table if you would like, as well as dynamically searching on any fields. If you include the search checkbox, it puts a blank field underneath the header row, and you can just start typing in digits or characters. And as you type in that table or result set will dynamically filter based on whatever you're typing in. So you don't have to re-query the report or rerun it to query the data. It'll just dynamically filter it right away, which is a very nice feature. With respect to line charts, we have the ability now, if you enable them to be web interactive, you can zoom in and zoom out based on a mouse wheel click. You can turn pens on and off. You can drag and drop left and right and pan and zoom with your mouse, as well as being able to hover over any point on the chart, and you'll get an instantaneous tag name, value, and timestamp at that point. So some more interactive tools on the web objects. The next, let's call this more complex feature of Dream Report, is a new function called a pivot or a step group. And this has been requested actually by several industries, definitely a lot by pharmaceutical, batch type reporting, but really can be applied in many instances. What we've done is taken the concept of our step table, where you can have, say, a table where you define an overall period, let's say the last month, and you want to do a report by day for the month. So you set the overall period for the month and the step period being 1 day, and then you can do any statistical calculations, functions, etc. by the day, or maybe it's monthly for the year. Taking that same concept, what we've allowed you to do is take an entire set of objects on a report. So it could be charts, it could be any kind of calculation, could be tables, really doesn't matter what it is, a widget. Group them all together and then repeat them on page by page by page. So what that allows you to do is, let's say you had a monthly energy usage report, and you now wanted to show that entire report for every month of the year. So what you could then do is group all of those objects together, say I want to create a step group out of them. I'd like to make this to be a year-to-date report, so the overall period will be for the year, and the steps will be by month. So when you generate that report, instead of being a one-page report, so we're now in September, we'll actually get 9 pages with that entire group of objects being repeated on each page, but automatically the time periods will be broken down into months for the year. Or maybe it's a batch report and you have phases or steps in a batch and you want the details of every phase in that report. All you need to do is make one report, a batch report, and then you'll group everything together as a pivot group. The overall time period will be the last batch. And then the step period, you'll identify the step phase or the batch step ID, and then it'll actually repeat those. And I'll show this later on for each phase or step in the report. You also have the ability to turn conditional formatting on and off for entire groups as well. So a lot of applicability for this in different industries. Another new feature is a configuration feature called multi-tag aggregation. What this does is allows you to create your own expressions, simple or complex mathematical or logical expressions as you want. And that expression can include values from multiple tags, different data sources. And then that is reusable anywhere in Dream Reports. So you might not want to plot a raw value on a chart, but maybe align with the results of some statistical or just free-form mathematical calculation. So you would then build your what we call multi-tag expression, and then later on you can reference it just as if it were a tag coming in from any raw data source or a process historian. A lot of historians, for instance, don't have a calculation engine in them. They only log raw tags, but maybe you have a power calculation based on several tags and some other factors. You can come up with that as your expression and then use it anywhere in Dream Report as if it were just a tag coming in from any data source. The new communication driver we have, actually it's a whole new subsystem to Dream Report, is this new remote connectivity server. And what this allows for is reporting of data sources from any remote location. A lot of Dream Report communication drivers will allow you to connect to data sources locally or remote, assuming that those data sources allow it. However, many data sources are only exposed on local machines. So in that case, what we do is you set up our remote connectivity server, you install the small part of Dream Report on that remote machine. So that would be the remote connectivity server on a remote node running maybe some HMI that doesn't support remote connections. Dream Report will then communicate with it locally there, and then use web services to move the data back over to the Dream Report node. And it really looks like a local data source at that point. It facilitates tag browsing. It's really transparent how the data comes across. Not only then can we get to data on remote PCs or remote servers, but of course data sources in the cloud. And this is an important area. You might have software as a service. Somebody is hosting something up in the cloud. With Dream Report, we can install the remote connector in the cloud, have it connect to that data source, and then again just use the remote connector server to move that data back to the Dream Report. Either data logging, if you are having Dream Report doing the data logging, or if it's a remote history source, the data transfer is optimized for transmitting large arrays of data. We compress the data, send it over, decompress it, and then make it available for reporting. And this is just a little configuration server. You tell it what communication driver you have remotely, how you'll be communicating to the Dream Report node, what ports, security levels, and basically it does the rest for you. A lot of emphasis has been put on working with SQL-only data sources in this version. As customers have started to use Dream Report beyond just the traditional automation data sources like process historians, HMIs, PLCs, things like MES databases or LIMS databases or any very database-centric applications. What we try to do is give as many tools as possible to help with non-SQL users work and SQL users work with those data sources. The first piece is this Visual SQL Query Builder, which will allow you to connect into any database and dragging and dropping, connecting, selecting fields, building filters, and basically it builds up the whole SQL query for you that you can then drop into any object in Dream Report. You can build up a library of SQL queries using our new SQL Query Manager for reuse at any point in time. So the query you might have built for a table might actually also be applicable for a bar chart later on. So you can go to that library, pick it, maybe change a few filters, and then feed it in. And you can even build up query subparts. So it might just be select statements that you want to use a lot, but the where expression might change from object to object. So you can then pick that and then just concatenate it with your where expression. Included in this new SQL Query Manager is this dynamic token browser. So basically you can either build complete queries or query parts and insert tokens from any other part of Dream Report. This might be a user selection from a drop-down list box, maybe filtering by material. Or it's a calculated value on another report that you want to pass into the query on a secondary report. Or it might even be part of the select statement. So based on what selections the user makes through the web portal, you can dynamically build up the select statement. So it's not just for where expressions, but really the entire SQL query itself can be glued together by a combination of static text and these dynamic tokens that you can browse from or reference anywhere in the project. We've enhanced the SQL query table object to really behave like any of the other tables in terms of giving you all the formatting options. So being able to change cells based on different conditions, conditional display options, being able to put a footer at the bottom of a table that's the result of a SQL query, changing captions, being able to dynamically sort and filter through a web portal, just like our other tables have that interactive feature on the web tables. Again, a nice way to take data from a SQL data source and really work with it as if it were any other data source in Dream Report. And here's part of that table interface: build your query, maybe use the Visual SQL Query Builder, and then either pick your list from a pre-built list of queries, add any dynamic tokens, and then set your appearance on that. SQL query support is now available for any object in Dream Report. So again, whether it's a chart, a widget, a bar graph, it doesn't really matter. Any queries can feed any object in Dream Report. We've also have a new ODBC driver. And the reason we built this enhanced ODBC driver is in the past, we've been asked to build custom Dream Report drivers for different packages, either off-the-shelf database packages or homegrown type systems. With this communication driver, you can probably do a lot of that on your own now, because we have the ability, for instance, if you want to provide tag browsing, then you can tell Dream Report how you want to look for those tags, what's the lookup. And so essentially, not only are you giving access to the raw data, but you can really almost build your own communication driver if the source of this data is a SQL type database. We have a couple of special editions of Dream Reports, which we really are considering add-ons. You cannot purchase them on your own. We'll talk about this shortly. They're add-ons to any Dream Report license. The MES option gives you primarily, there's a lot of functionality that you get with it, but the main benefit of purchasing this MES option, and I really like to consider this MES focused, but really in any database add-on. Since Dream Report counts licenses or tags towards your license, whether it's a tag from an HMI or historian, or if it's a SQL table, when you start working with large database applications, you will have many, many SQL fields. And essentially, any one of those fields that you query from a view or a stored procedure or a table adds to your tag count. Dream Report, if you add this MES option on, will not consider any of those as tags and just let you go to town with querying those SQL data sources. And you don't have to worry about what your tag count is. In addition to that, you'll also get 5 web clients. And again, you can bundle that. Maybe you've purchased a 250 tag IO Dream Report license with an MES add-on, or a 5,000 tag Dream Report with an MES add-on. And really what you can get out of it with these very SQL-based applications, it's up to you what you want to do with it, but traditional or typical type MES reports, interactive drill-through reports, barcodes, conditional displays, hyperlinking from one report to another, passing parameters from one to another. So really a great solution for MES type reporting. As I mentioned, it gives you unlimited SQL statements as well as 5 concurrent web clients, and is purchased in addition to any base license. The other add-on or new option we have is a life sciences option. And the 3 main pieces to this, first of all, is it gives us electronic signature, very important in regulated industries like FDA or in pharmaceutical type applications. It gives us runtime audit trail recording. So any runtime activities, whether reports are generated by schedule, triggered automatically, maybe initiated by a user from a web portal, all of those activities are monitored, are recorded in a database with the username, when it happened, what module generated, etc. So really just giving you that complete runtime audit trail. We already have version control on the development side of Dream Report. This just enhances it from the runtime side of things. We have this F-sub-zero calculation module to calculate the F-zero value for sterilization, again used in food and pharmaceutical type processes. And then, of course, some of the other modules that are already there, the set point and pulse analysis modules. And again, it is in addition to any base Dream Report license. Electronic signatures, we'll show you those shortly, can include a scanned signature or just printed name. You can have multiple signatures required on a document, and they show up very nicely it's really 2 parts to it. One is you configure the e-signature configuration with any users that you configure in Dream Report. And then secondly, we actually have the e-signature object, which gets dropped onto a report. And actually a third component is an e-signature manager, where somebody can review the unsigned reports, say I have permission to sign these ones, I'll sign them, and then it'll generate the report with the signature included. Some new productivity tools for SIs. This is a nice tool. A customer or an SI maybe puts together a Dream Report system for a customer. What they can then do with it is take that entire project, create what's called an initial deployment package, which generates a single executable with the Dream Report software, the project that was just created, any prerequisites that might be needed, takes that to the customer's PC or server, double clicks on the executable, it installs everything, prompts for reboot, and the project starts running on the machine starting up. Customer, a few months down the line, might want some changes to the reports, maybe want a few reports added, go back to the SI, they can do the development in-house, create an update deployment package, again, another executable, but this time it only includes the changes to the package. They can email it or put it in a Dropbox link for their customer to grab, double click, put it on the machine, it applies the changes, restarts the runtime engine, the Dream Report runtime engine, and away they go with the changes applied to the reporting project. The feature we've added to the Dream Report templates, which has always been a nice feature, being able to take any report and turn it into a template, is to actually lock those templates. You might have an OEM or an SI with a skill in a specific vertical market. Maybe it's water in the United States. Every state has different state requirements for their local water authorities or state water authorities. And so what an SI might do is build monthly treatment reports for each state and sell them as locked templates. So anyone wanting to use them simply purchases them, gets the unlock key, and applies that to their reports, saving them a lot of time, making money for the developers or the SI or the OEM providing it. And really, we see this as an opportunity for really to build up a community, one for people to share Dream Report templates and others to basically make money off of their engineering efforts as well. And then finally, our runtime and performance functionality. The first is this in-house, what we call this power-generated technology, which allows Dream Report to generate up to 50 reports simultaneously. Up until now, Dream Report typically queues up the reports and they get generated serially. So if a bunch of people are using Dream Report, the response is pretty good, but let's say there's one report which takes 10 minutes to run. There could be a wait. Hopefully a report that takes 10 minutes to run is scheduled to happen at midnight or 1 a.m. when no one's around. But if a lot of people are using it, there might be a lag from the time when you generate a report to when it actually comes back to you. So with this new technology, we can generate up to 50 reports in parallel. And again, very important for large projects for multi-user type environments. As well as we have some CPU priority management. Again, if Dream Report's used on maybe on a historian or an HMI machine that shares the machine, we can tune CPU priority for the different parts of Dream Report. Maybe the logger wants priority, but not the report generator, those kind of things. So you can tweak it up that way. That's our PowerPoint. And what I'd like to do now is fire up my virtual machine. And let's start taking a look at Dream Report 4.6.2 with some of the new features. So what I've done here is I've built actually a bunch of reports already that I can highlight the different functionality. Those of you who have not seen 4.6 yet, obviously this interface looks a little different now. It's just a more modern look and feel to it. We won't focus on that, but what we will focus on are the new objects or the new features with our objects. So the first one we'll look at are tables. We've already, all of our table objects, whether it's a simple item table, a step table, a free form, or an automatic statistic table. The first thing, when you drop it on the screen, it'll pretty much look from a configuration perspective very much the same. The main change being under the, here, let's take a look over here, under the appearance section, the ability to do dynamic sorting in the web, and whether or not you want to enable the filter edit box to be able to dynamically filter the data just by typing in any search characters. What, of course, you'll also see here are the corners under home. We have the ability to have no corners. Maybe you do want rounding on your corners. If you want shading, where do you want the shading, the shadow size, the color of the shading. So, something like this we might put some pretty big shadow and maybe change our shadow color. Not that you'd want to do that, but to purple or something. So change the shadow color to purple. Just kind of a more modern look to that. Of course, you can keep it plain and simple without any corners and any shading. One of the new new widgets, which we can use in any of our single data objects, like an expression or a calculation object or a compound object, is the new digital display widget. And this, under our result representation, instead of showing it as a number or a timestamp or a barcode, is this new widget object. Tell it the size of the widget, size of the digits, background color, digit color, etc. They're just a nice graphical pop to your data if you want something to show up. The other thing we have here is, since we're talking about graphical objects, is the conditional display. So for instance, let's say I only wanted to show this table if my average temperature exceeded a certain amount. So in that case, we can come in here, and this is some arbitrary table I have on here, but the configuration is not actually done in the table configuration because this is a generic feature. All you do is you right-click on it and say, I want to do a conditional display. And at runtime, it can either be based on some real-time value, so I could look at a value in my HMI or my PLC and evaluate it, or it might be another value on this report. So for instance, this object over here I called average temperature, which gives me the average temperature in the last month. In this case, under conditional display, I'll say I'll browse to that object, that single data object, which was average temperature, and I've said only show this table if that calculated value is greater than or equal to 35. So looking at that at runtime, when we reload our reports, take a look at what we get here. It's firing up our reports and generate that. And here we have our report. And this section is not shown because my average temperature was only 30.94. So the conditional display available here. While we're here, let's just get our web browser opening, ready for the next section. The next thing we'll look at is our trending and chart objects. This is really a very nice set of enhancements. As you can see, our graphs and charts look a lot different to what they have in the past in terms of colors, font options, background options. So for instance, over here, let's take a look at this line chart. We have, in terms of background, area fill, gradients, more control over fonts are all included in this option. Here we have a line with a mark. And again, just a few different ways to show it. A lot of enhancements also for our bar and pie charts. A lot of different bar display options added. For I think we only have the flat, there's 3D and a cylinder. We have quite a few additional options now as well here. Yeah, we have this is a different shading. In this case also, you can set the background to be transparent. So you can superimpose a chart on top of another image, or even maybe superimpose a line chart on top of a bar chart. So you want to maybe show a bunch of lines from a line chart superimposed on top of a bar chart. So that's all possible. Over here, I just have a simple graphical image. I've set the background to be transparent, and just to give a nice look to that. Our pie charts, again, have quite a few options in terms of displays. We have here donuts, pies, and if it's a donut, rounded donuts, gradients, etc. So let's just take a look at what these look like from the runtime perspective. And yeah, let's just go look at it in a web browser. And here we have the Dream Report web, our formatting on our reports shown up, and our different pie and bar chart objects shown here. Okay, while we're here, let's just go back real quick and look at those table objects we just created or just generated. In this case over here, you'll see we have the dynamic sort. So sorting by month, sorting by energy usage, or maybe I'm even looking for a specific value. Was there anything that was like 6 point something? Yep. So right there, as I type in 6 points, it filters out any rows that meet that criteria. Okay. And again, we can show and hide or expand and contract content as needed. Let's take a look now at our step groups. I built 3 basic tables here, or 3 basic reports. The first one is a time-based report summarizing my energy usage and outside temperature for the past month. And this is showing min-max, average, first and last readings of my energy consumed in my building, as well as what the outside temperature was. I also want to look at a daily average as well as an energy signature chart. So maybe a pretty standard building energy type report. And what that would look like on the runtime side of things is a nice single report, and for the last month is August. Now what I'd like to do is use this exact same report, but at any time I want to look at this for the last year, the current year, whatever time period I want, broken down by month. So here is where we start to look at the pivot group functionality. So all I'm going to do is group all the objects that I want as part of my pivot or step group together, right-click and say create a pivot group. In this case, I'll just call it maybe monthly group, just give it a name. My overall time period, let's say there's going to be a year-to-date report, so I'll say fixed period for the current 1 year. And now my step period will be time-based by month. Okay, and I could even show or hide this group based on certain conditions as well. And now you see everything is grouped together, and if you can see a dashed line, and we have our pivot group put together here. I'll do a couple of others and then batch based, and then we'll look at these at runtime. In this case, this is a batch report for a specific batch that might have run. And let's go and say generate that and open one up. And here we have, say, for batch 489-130, it's a batch report with some statistics, valve summary, charts, any alarms and events that occurred during the running of this batch. Maybe I'd like to know, give me a summary of all the batches that ran this month or on the last day, and I want batch reports of all of them. Not necessarily a summary, detailed batch reports of each one. So in that case, coming back in here, I can grab everything that makes up part of this, the report, and I would like to right-click on here and create a pivot group. And in this case, we'll call this batch group. And let's do this fixed period for, let's say, the current 2 hours. And all the batches that run in this current 2 hours. So that's my overall time period. My step period, however, will be batch-based. And I pick my batch definition, which is my batch ID. And we'll look at that momentarily. The last one, I put together just a quickly this morning, a little a step detail. I want to know details of the raw data that happened during each phase or step in that report. Excuse me, in that batch. So what I can do here, first of all, I just want to put this as a header. So this is the last batch that ran. So I can right-click over here and say, show this header on the top of every page. But the detailed section over here, I would like to show or turn that into a group. And we'll change that into a pivot group. We'll call this a phase or a step group. The overall time period will be a fixed period, batch-based for the last one batch that ran. But my step period, again, will be batch-based. Now, you see there's also a SQL-based period. You can run a SQL query on some other source, and however the values are returned in the time periods, we can actually use those as your step intervals. But this is, again, another batch-based. And in this case, I'm logging or monitoring my batch step, so I'm going to use that as a sub-phase or sub-step to report for this batch report. All right, let's reload our reports and take a look at what we get out of this. First of all, let's do the monthly energy summary and generate that. It's obviously going to take a little longer to run this one because we're now looking at data from the beginning of the year as opposed to just the last 1 month. So it's extracting all that data, breaking it down by month, and what we get out of it now is not a 1-page report, but a 9-page report, which is good to know because it's September now. And here's January, and I'm just using my mouse to roll down. So this is, somebody asked me, is this a dynamic changing in front of my eyes? No, I'm just using my mouse down arrow. And here it's bringing up my data for all of July, all of August, all of September. We're only up to the 18th or 17th today. So it's taken a single report, broken it down by month over an overall time period. A very powerful feature that's really not available anywhere else. Let's take a look at our batch reports, and we'll stay here. For this one, remember what we said for the current 2 hours. I want to get all my batches that ran for this current 2 hours. So I'll generate that. And now let's bring that up and see what we get out of this report. Again, take a little longer because it's scanning, extracting all the data for the current 2 hours of all the batches that ran. All right, and here we have a 21-page report. So starting at 7 o'clock this morning and ending at 7:38, ending at 7:03:54, that was batch 129. And going down the line, here we have our batch reports of all the batches that ran. And I apparently forgot to include, I didn't grab my alarm table when I included my group because my alarm information is not changing, I see over here. But that's okay. You get the concept of the same report just being repeated, but for each batch. And then finally, let's take a batch that was a pretty active batch before, and I want to, where is it over here? That was our batch step, and generate that for, let's do the last one which ran, so batch step, and generate that. All right, the last batch which ran was 149, and it started at 8:04:58, ended at 8:08:10. And here is the, look at the time periods, each phase or step ID, and the details of each step during the running of this specific batch. Okay, so just using the pivot group in different ways to repeat complete objects and break them down into whatever subperiod you define in these pivot groups. Again, a very powerful feature for various applications. Let's take a look at e-signatures. I have a little summary report here. The point of this is not really to show the content of the report, but maybe to include an electronic signature, somebody signing off saying, all right, we can submit the summary of all our reports to the FDA for review. And so how do we do that? So step one is we go up to our project settings and edit our project users. And in this case, I've already configured a couple of users. This QA manager already has his or electronic signature information set up. I will add one in here or configure one for this user. So let's just say his name is title over here. And if we want to use a scanned image for their signature, we can browse for that. And I think we have it under pictures and e-signature scan. All right, and we'll give Inspector Gadget a PIN code as well that's going to be required before he can sign off. Okay, so that is, we've configured that user's electronic signature information. That was step one. Okay, step two, when this report gets generated, I need to ensure under my report file format that that e-signature is required. Okay, so with that in mind, when this gets generated, it will result in be put into a folder called the unsigned reports folder that will expect an electronic signature. Otherwise, you will see a blank signature on the report. And then the final part is to actually take the e-signature object and drop it onto the report. So here, this little icon on the bottom right, we'll take that and drag and drop it onto our report. And we'll just give it a name so we can reference it, e-sig1. Display the image and display a comment and who's allowed to sign this report. Let's say my QA manager and Inspector Gadget, and allow the watermark stamp title. So we'll just do all those real fast. Okay. And where was the image on the bottom? Let's do it on the right. Okay, won't do too much formatting other than, let's just give ourselves, since we have rounded corners, let's take advantage of them. And all right, so let's go ahead and generate this report. So this is our batch summary, our e-signature report. And if I generate it, and let's say this is scheduled to happen automatically at the end of every month, summarizes all the batches that ran. And what we should get shortly is our report, but it is currently unsigned, nothing in there. So what do we do next? What I can do is either from my Dream Report menu choice or from the Runtime Management Console, open the e-signature console. And I have to log in with whoever I am. Now, if this is, obviously we don't expect somebody to be on the Dream Report machine, so you can install this e-signature console on a remote machine, and then you can just tell it where the Dream Report project is running. Okay, so Inspector Gadget logs in. Select a report to sign. If there were any unsigned reports, they would all be listed here. So this is one which ran today at 8:12:36 a.m. So this is the report he wants to sign, and put in my PIN code. If we had enabled any stamps like approved or rejected, we could select that. And let's just say, okay, for lease to FDA. Okay, and sign it. And it applies the signature, okay, and I can close it. So now, if I were to open this report, there we have it. So, okay to release, there's my electronic signature, and it is now in a signed report with our electronic signature. Okay, moving right along, running out of time. I'm going to extend this, if you don't mind, an extra 10-15 minutes to make it an hour instead of 45 minutes. The last few sections to look at are, let's come in here and take a look at multi-tag aggregation. So under my Tools menu choice, I have this multi-tag aggregation option. And this is our editor where we can build up different expressions. So I have one here, which is, I have 3 tanks in my tank farm, and I have an expression which gets me the total tank level on hand. What I can do here, let's say I want to do one in gallons, and I could either start going from scratch. I can browse for my different tags, so maybe it's under my process data and get tank 1, add that tag, plus tank 2, etc. But what I'm going to do is, since I copied the previous one, we want to convert that to gallons. So what do we do here? We do all of that and divide by, I think, 3.8. And we will add that as a new expression. Okay, so we have a calculated in gallons and liters. And with that in mind now, we could maybe pop a chart on the report, quick line chart. And in this line chart, let's say we want to grab, actually a good example here was, let's just look at those 3. I'm going to add those very fast. The raw, tank 1, tank 2, oops, and tank 3. And I'm going to add one more, and this time I'll go to this new source of data, multi-tag aggregation, and get my total tank level, the sum of those 3 in this tag over here, and add that. So let's just say that one is our turquoise one, and we're doing this for the last 1 day. And let's just generate that. So turquoise is what we're looking at. I didn't really do any formatting or anything here, but let's see what we get here. And that is our multi-tag aggregation. So turquoise up to 4,100. So if we were to actually look at that 1,400 plus the green one, 1,500, and whatever the other one was, low, would sum it up to, the 3 values would sum up to our total. So again, the turquoise or teal one is the sum of the 3 values. Now that doesn't only have to be done with raw data. We could even go to something like we want to aggregate this. So we have a daily sum in gallons. And what I could do here, or the sum of all 3, I could maybe do a quick item table. And in this case, I'd like to edit my list. And in this case, I'm going to look at my multi-tag aggregation for liters and gallons. And I would like to add an aggregated data filter, let's say in daily averages for each one. And let's do a fixed period for the last 1 week. And let's see what we get now. And let's regenerate that report. We have our our average level in gallons and our average level in liters on a daily basis, averaging for the last week. So again, it just looks as if it were a tag coming from any traditional data source, but it's a calculation based on whatever formula or logical expression you come up with. All right, the last major piece to look at, and there are, as I said, a lot of other little features here and there, from CPU tuning to deployment packages, all of that. But in terms of reporting feature, is the new SQL functionality. I mentioned we have the SQL Manager, will allow you to build your own queries or query parts and reference them later on. If you want to build them up there, it can be done here, or from any object and be added to this list. You can also import them from a text file or even export them as well for use in other applications. So on this last table I have here, or last report, I put a SQL table object, which is this object over here, and dropped it on the screen. And I have a query against some batch database. Now, assuming I didn't know anything about SQL, I would probably be scratching my head for quite a while to come up with this query. However, what I can do is go ahead and click on the Visual SQL Query Builder and actually show you how to build a query against this data source. And by the way, I should probably have shown where it's coming from here. And we have a pretty large batch history database with a bunch of tables and views, and basically I want to get information out of this batch history database. So when I clicked on the Show Visual Query Editor, up comes my query editor. It allows me to connect to whatever database I've defined, my ODBC data source. So in this case, I got my batch ID log, I got my material input table over here. I dragged and dropped a connection to make a join. So it actually joins the tables that I can then pick fields. And let's say, so you just simply click on the fields you want, and let's say I want to sort by, maybe by batch ID. So let's add a sort order ascending, and then by lot ID secondary. And so there we have it added the order by expression in our report. Now, you certainly don't need SQL Management Studio. In fact, you don't need any SQL tools on your machine. This is purely part of Dream Report, and this is not the SQL query or part of Microsoft or Oracle. This is included with the Dream Report package. So there we have it. We've come up with our query, and it's now in here. Under our appearance, we can change captions. We can do conditional formatting. So for instance, maybe if my actual quantity, I want to do advanced options, was 0 to 0. Let's say if I had any quantities that were 0, we want to draw attention to that. So I want to change the color to red. I'd like to add a footer on here. And in this case, I will add, let's put in here real fast. So total, I put a text, and then for my actual quantity, I went into here and, column 8, that was my last column, and I want to sum up. And how do I want to show the results with 2 decimal places? Even write back the results of this, the footer back to an object in the PLC or the HMI if I wanted to, but that's going crazy. So let's just leave it like that. And let's take a look at this report. For us to work with this, actually, in this case, it works fine as a PDF or a web report. And the last example I'll show you next will actually make it an interactive report with tokens based on user selections. So let's just pop out that report real fast. And it's querying my batch history. And anything that was a 0, I should show in red. And at the bottom, sum up my actual quantity of all the ingredients that were added from this batch database. All right, so that's a pretty simple SQL query. Wasn't so simple if you don't know SQL, but it is a query. But we didn't put any filters or where expressions or anything like that on this report. So the last thing I'd like to do here is I'm going to actually just get rid of that piece and pop it onto my scratch pad down here. And I'm going to take 4 objects from my scratch pad and pop them back onto my report. And do a little fancy footwork here, if you will, on using SQL manipulation. So what I've done now is I've said the output of this report is going to be, as well as PDF, is going to be a web report. And the reason I made it web is so that my users can interact with drop-down list boxes and combo boxes and what have you. So what we did here, or what I did, is took a combo box and dropped it over here. And I'd like to be able to filter by material. So if I knew the query, I could write the whole query over here. Or, first of all, I want to give the ability to do a wildcard. So let's forget the wildcard for now. So if I knew the query, I would say select material ID, blah, 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 from the appropriate table. But since I might be using that in a lot of different filter reports, I can go to my SQL Query Manager and pick one of those and add it there. And so now, when this thing runs at runtime, that query will be generated. But as I said earlier on, you can make it a full query or a query part. So what I've done here is I want to select a wildcard character and then just union it with the results of this material list. So I want to show the combo box with a list of a result of a SQL query. Likewise over here, this one queries my phase list. And if I actually go in here, we can see what the phase list, it brings up our SQL Query Manager, which gets my phase ID from my material input table. And I've done the same thing here. Now let's see what I modified to my exact same table. In this case now, I added a where expression. So we didn't have the where expression before, where I said where material name like, and so this is where I can now say like, and let me put a dynamic token in here. From a combo box, my material name, and my phase ID is like, and I can add my combo box phase. And so now we're dynamically building up our SQL expression to include the results of a user-provided selection. And then the last thing I'll do is put an action button on this report, which will get me, all I want to do is refresh the report. Okay, let's fire that up into runtime, and then we'll go into the Dream Report web portal and work with this report through our user filters. All right, so back to the web portal, go back home, and here, generate the web version, not the PDF version. So over here, let's say I want to look at whatever that white pet raw material was and refresh my report. And what we get out of this now is the results of that is a filter of just that, and of course a sum. Or maybe it's whatever that filter is, excuse me, whatever that raw material is, and even do a secondary phase. I want to look at anything of that raw ingredient, that chemical, along with that was added in our pre-weigh area. So do a multiple or a complex where expression and refresh my report, and hopefully we get some data out of that. Just trying to catch up. And there we have our material, our phase, and our new result over here. So there we have, I guess, in addition to showing how you use this as a web report, being able to pass in tokens either from a calculated value, in this case, a user selection, into a query to get your results. And I think we have covered all of the new features here, or all the ones that I said I would cover. I think the last piece I wanted to show was on our graphical engine. That was something I should have shown you earlier on. Going back real fast to our little chart over here. And I'm going to say appearance. Let's make this chart web interactive. So this line chart. And I'm going to say the output of this report can also be a web output. So let's take a look at that now. And reload our reports, and then we'll be done. Portal, go home, and let's generate that report. All right, so here's our interactive version of the chart. As you can see, we can hover over a value. We can use our mouse to zoom in. I can move things around. I can turn pens on and off. And there's our interactivity on the line charts, or go back to the original scale and turn whatever pens I want on or off. As you see, as I move things around, one thing that you cannot expect is if I keep moving left or right, like a real-time trend, it's going to continue to show me data. The zoom in and the zoom out is specifically based on the data that was queried to generate this report. For instance, if this was the last week, it'll show me the last week. If I keep zooming out, it's not going to continue to show me further back into time. That's really where the analytic tools from our various automation vendors, the trending packages which work with their historians, that's a better tool, or a more appropriate tool, I should say, if you want to get into more of the analytic side of things. But certainly very easy to get in here and for the data you've queried to be able to manipulate and get in more detail. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Hopefully I've given you a good idea of all the latest and greatest new features in Dream Report. There really isn't an industrial automation focused reporting package on the market that can do anywhere near what Dream Report can do here. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your days.